Hey, good evening, everybody. Just the usual technical problems with Sony Vegas there. Tried to fire it up last night to do the weathercast, and it would not start. So that's the reason we had that false start just a minute ago, and I think everything is running fine at this point. So let's head into the charts and see what's going on across the U.S. Got the moisture in place across Oklahoma. This is the surface plots with the dew point outlined in green here. And yeah, you can see those dew points up into the lower 70s across many parts of Oklahoma. And for a while, I thought that we may see a few storms firing up along the Oklahoma-Kansas border. In fact, you can see those southeast winds there. But the problem is that big ridge is keeping everything shut down. And I'm going to skip right over to the satellite, and we'll check that out, and let me figure out what window that's in. There it is. Okay, that's the European. We'll look at that in a minute. But let's go down to the Great Plains and show how things kind of evolved earlier. Okay, so this is the current satellite photo. You can see that there are thunderstorms around Guyman. In fact, the southern one looks pretty good there, showing a pretty good overshooting top. But earlier, the storms got going along the Sangre de Cristo Mountains from about Raton down to about Las Vegas. And this is about 3:30 p.m. And we go back a little further, and you can see that they get started in this congested area of cumulus right off the edge. And meanwhile, out in Oklahoma, briefly up in that area near Alva, there was a little boundary that I was kind of keeping an eye on, and there may have been some chasers up in that area. But as you can see, it kind of pulsed there, a little shortwave working across, and then eventually it pulled back together there. See that cluster right there, but didn't quite pull it off. And in fact, the cumulus field right there around Enid is looking pretty high-based. So when we get up to about 7:30 to 8 p.m., that's when you're not going to get the storms going without some sort of forcing. So yeah, there's the current satellite, and let's take a look elsewhere around the country. If you want to escape the chaser crowds, of course, Montana has a lot of potential. And you'll notice that if you run this back, very similar pattern. Cumulus development over the mountains. And they get going out there near, I guess, Butte and Bozeman. And they move off into the plains, and it looks like there's one other boundary where a few cells also developed. And we just end up with kind of a cluster of cells. It looks like the predominant ones are the ones that moved in from the southwest there. And of course, we've also got the remains of Alberto. And that tracked across western Indiana earlier today, and the circulation still shows up pretty well there. The actual convective elements are really not much bigger than a small MCS. Most of this cloud cover around it is just a lot of cirrus and broken cumulus overcast. But anyway, that cell moves on up towards Lake Michigan at around the western coast of Michigan. I'm trying to remember the names of the towns. I guess Benton Harbor and Grand Rapids, maybe. Anyway, yeah, it's moving on off pretty quickly, and I think by morning the remains should be up there in Canada. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the usual sequence. We'll roll that back, and I think a good place to start out with is SPC. We'll kind of see what they had. Enhanced area along the Kansas-Oklahoma border, and it looks like they've got this placed in advance of that MCS. So that's going to be continuing overnight in that area. Mesoscale discussion, and yeah, watch a severe watch for that little cluster of cells. And I've got the radar up. There's the Amarillo radar. Let me move that. So we got one pretty good cell there on the tail end, just south of Texoma, moving towards Spearman. However, a couple things with that cell look to be not too severe. One is the center of the core of the storm is pretty well in the center of the lower intensity echoes. so we don't see that like a really strong core off on the south side, nothing like that. Also, let's see, check out the circulation. It's got a little bit of a circulation there. We'll zoom in on that. And just a quick look at that, 33 in and about 26 out, about 60 knots of broad scale rotation, located about right there. That's the centroid. And you can see that's pretty well about where we expect it. That should be the inflow quadrant of that storm there. So it's pretty strong, and it's probably just going to continue moving to the east-southeast there. And I'd say with that rotation there, it does have a little bit of potential there for maybe a tornado touchdown. Let me do a cross-section and get some more information on the structure of the storm. And you can see it's got some pretty good overhang there. Let me move that. So it's a very classic weak echo region. This is the rain-free base, kind of a misnomer because there's often some light rain and large hailstones falling out of that, and some very good lightning is common. And also, more significantly, we have the inflow and the updraft, and that's probably punching up about right in that area there. And above that, a bit of a hell factory up there at about 30,000 feet, so you don't want to be penetrating that in a airliner. It's a good thing they've got onboard radar. So the hail is falling out, and most of it's being wrapped around into the circulation, kind of like that there. Kind of coming into the page and then around to the right. So we'll come back and look at this and see if it's developed, but right now it doesn't look too bad, really. Okay, so that's about it for the stronger stuff, a little MCS in northern Alabama, and of course the remains up there in the Chicago area. I would expect probably a few flight delays in that region. Okay, zeroed out frames. I'm glad this 720p webcast is working out fine. 250 millibar analysis up there at about 34,000 feet, capturing both the polar front and subtropical jet. Polar front jet way up to the north, from Washington up to Manitoba. There it is, way up there to the top. And across Texas, that's a classic subtropical jet. There's almost certainly no frontal system in this area to help support that jet stream wind there. So that's going to be subtropical as far as the mechanism in that thing. Then up to 700 millibars. Let's see how the temperatures have evolved over the past 48 hours. It's warmed up quite a bit there at Amarillo. And it looks like in between Amarillo, there are 14 there, and Dodge City is 9. So there's a little bit of cap weakening as you go north, although these things did initiate largely through orographics. Had the very strong heating on the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, probably a little bit of shortwave activity aloft, and some steep lapse rates probably helped get those things going. And once you have a strong storm with a good cold pool, the cap temperature is not really that much of a factor at that point there. When you do lose the heating, of course, that definitely starts coming back and affecting how long the thing lasts overnight. If you have kind of a strong cap, it's going to tend to fall apart pretty quickly. So anyway, it's going to be moving out to the east there. It looks like the winds there at 700 millibars are a little bit on the light side. So weak mid-level flow, that's going to be a problem, but aloft, definitely getting some help there with those 90-knot winds. And then finally at 850 millibars, we'll look at the moisture. It has picked up quite a bit. I see 13 to 15, which is going to be mid to upper 50s across much of the southern plains. However, most of that is kind of veered and heading towards the central Mississippi River region there. That storm right there that we've been tracking is up in this area, so it looks like it's getting a little bit of paltry moisture there from the Panhandles region, and the flow probably has maybe backed a little bit during the day. So we'll see if we can check the upper level reports. Maybe I can do that real quick. How do we check the upper level reports without a constant pressure chart? Well, you can use digital atmosphere. Those will definitely come right up. But another way is to go to SPC and just kind of use the rapid refresh as a cheat sheet. And there's a experimental mesoanalysis. You add exper on the end of the URL, and that'll take you to this page, and then we go to this mesoanalysis graphics. And I guess I'll take the national view here, and I'm going to plot the upper level chart, 300 millibars. And this will give us, this is an estimate. We have to keep that in mind. This is model-derived data. This is not observed data, but it should be fairly accurate. And what I can see there in that region where that storm is 70 to 75 knot winds. So that's pretty good there. And let's check out the 850. And you can see that the 850 flow did back. In fact, I'm sure this is a little bit hard to read, so let me zoom in. Probably still not much help there, but anyway, if you look at the brown wind plots, you can see that we did get a response there in the low-level wind flow, low-level wind field. So there's probably been some very strong dynamics working in the panhandles and New Mexico region. That's the only way we're going to get that low-level flow backing the way it did from 12Z this morning. So we do have some of that upper-level support helping to shape this situation, and that's helped feed moisture into that storm. If we didn't have that backflow, that would be pretty much gone. So let's look at some of the thermodynamic parameters. We'll look at the surface-based CAPE, and you can see the values on that are pretty impressive, up near 4,000. Of course, we should take the mix layer for a more accurate reading. The atmosphere should be pretty well mixed at this point near that storm, but we're still squeaking out about 3,000. That's pretty good instability. And let's see, what else do we have here? Mid-level lapse rates, we can take a look at that, I guess. And you can see the higher lapse rates out to the west there. So more favorable environment in that region. Very unstable, and I'm sure the hot temperatures are helping out with that to some extent. Okay, let's look at the thickness and isobars. And we kind of spot our culprit out there to the west. We've got a frontal system moving inland. Looks like the front is probably something like that right there. Looks like we have a warm front extending into Idaho and Montana. So that would explain the storms there in the Montana region, and that probably curves up to the north. Looks like some sort of wave maybe in this area of Saskatchewan. And probably another little low up there near Moosonee. And then that goes maybe to the southeast. There's a warm front. So kind of a complex setup, series of waves, looks like 3 or 4 of them. And with that frontal system, of course, we're going to get a response in the upper level field. Jet stream should be pulling in behind, kind of like that there. And we get the troughing in the upper levels with that. So the subtropical jet is definitely out ahead of that, something like that right there. So no frontal support with that. But as that trough moves inland, we could see those two jets kind of converge and pair up a little bit. Okay, let's see. Let's head back to the satellite. Let me get caught up on the chat there. Make sure the stream is looking good. What are we going to show? I thought I had a water vapor image. Yeah, there's one. Let me see if I can load that up, get some current data. Okay. All right. Let's try this. Yeah, you can certainly see the dry air in the Great Plains, quite a bit of it, up north and south from Texas all the way to the Dakotas. A lot of the better moisture is well up to the northwest. And you can see the tropical moisture way out there in the eastern U.S. Yeah, right through here, all this grayish color that's indicating a cold temperature to the water vapor channel, and that's because of attenuation by moisture in the mid-levels. So normally there would be radiation coming up from the ground directly to the satellite, like you see right in this area, and it would appear hot to the satellite. The temperatures are about the same, sort of similar between Kentucky and South Dakota there, but the moisture is blocking the thermal radiation from making it up to the satellite. And this is a specific wavelength that this water vapor channel uses. It's sensitive to this kind of attenuation, and so as a result we can see where a lot of the moisture is. Okay, let me take a look at the chat and see what's going on here. Let me just move this over. We have Sue M. Alberto swept through today. I'm sure that was quite a thing, quite a rare event there for Indiana. Straight from Belize up to Indiana. Ron Chalfon in Southern California, and David Lumbert, 87 there in Central Arkansas. Got Electric Dog in Northeast Illinois. Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, 87. Got Ryan Toomey's there in Florida. And Sue M reports she was on the east side of the storm, 20 miles to the west. It's a very close one there. Let me get some of this out of the way. Hang on a second. Okay, yeah, that'll work there. Okay, Christian Flock, 90 in Yukon, Oklahoma. Dew point of 72. Got Mick there in Australia. Shirley Keast, listening on the road. Fun with Tech, and Willie Greenway there in Georgia. Dean Benedict and Burl H. I don't know if I mentioned your name already, but anyway, either way, welcome. Light rain in the north suburbs of Chicago, 3 inches in Elgin. Okay, glad to hear the video quality, Ryan. David Moore, back home from 10 days of chasing. Severe storms 8 of the 10 days. Yeah, you know, in fact, I went on Facebook this morning and I tried to start a survey because I was kind of curious how this year has been for chasers. There's been definitely a tornado drought, and I'm looking forward to going back on there and seeing how people have fared so far this year. Yep, record low tornado season. We went kind of over that on the Weather Brains night. In fact, I showed some maps. I don't know how many of you saw that, but there were numerous storms going all the way back to 2000. Then you pull up 2015, and there were only 30 tornadoes total in the U.S. up to that date. And that contrasts quite a bit with the usual, at least 150 to 250 tornadoes that we usually see. Measurement on GR level 2. Want to see how you apply to the storm product. Measure on storm velocity. Well, yeah, we do that from time to time. We can go over that really quickly. So anyway, I use this readout down here at the bottom. Let me switch over to the velocity. Yeah, there it is. That shows the maximum unambiguous velocity and the actual observed velocity. So let me zoom in on that, and there's that couplet there on that storm. We'll get really zoomed in. That's the problem with a lot of web products. They don't zoom in quite enough, and you really have to go down tight on these storms to really, fish out the higher velocity values. So now that it's zoomed in, I can see that there's this very strong inbound couplet. Reds are always hang on, let me see what's going on here. They're always outbound. Why would that be outbound? Hang on a second. Let me see what's going on. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why we've got kind of a backwards velocity signature. Yeah, green is always going to be your inbound. That's going to be your negative velocity. As you can see it down here, it says minus 17. And red is always outbound. I may have jumped on this kind of early when I covered the storm. So let me see if I can find out what's going on here. This could be an example here of aliased velocity data. So let's see here. There's the storm. I would expect the updraft area to be down in this region here. So this is telling me we've got, where's my drawing tool? Okay, got to pull up the drawing tool. Hang on. All right, there it is. Okay, so what this is showing is that at 6,000 feet, there's outbounds there and inbounds here, and then some more outbounds over there. And I would expect the reverse. So let me go up to the higher tilts and see what's going on. There's, hang on, those are inbounds, outbounds here. Okay, so it's still not apparent to me. This is kind of weird. So what I'll do is I'll use some time continuity and go backwards a little bit and see what it looked like at an earlier stage. You know, it could be that this thing may be very outflowish. Yeah, I'm not too sure why we've got that kind of circulation going on. It's almost anticyclonic there. So I think maybe it's just kind of an outflow dominant storm. Outflow boundary on that thing. Hang on a second, I'm getting an alert from OBS Studio. Let me check and make sure we're still on. Okay, I've got a stream resumed issue. I'm not showing any dropped frames, so I'm not really too sure what happened there. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue. We'll get back to the charts here, and I think it's probably about time to do the forecast, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, for tonight, looking at the high-resolution rapid refresh. First thing that we're going to do is verify the radar data with the model. So right now it's about 0-1Z. I think maybe the storms are a little bit ahead of this position, so I think the model may be running a little bit slow there. So these things are probably going to be propagating really quickly to the east. One other problem is that the storms don't seem to extend into the second tier of counties in the Panhandle. As you can see here, about the furthest extent really is just barely into the Texas Panhandle region there, so it may be kind of overdoing the southward extent of the storms. That's not to say it can't change and backbuild a little bit, but anyway, that's just something to be aware of. So anyway, showing a very strong meso high behind that. Looks like a pretty good cold pool, and most of this is heading towards looks like Woodward, Fort Supply, and on into the Alva and Enid area for later. Then by dawn it looks like that's going to be entering southwestern Missouri there. It starts falling apart as it usually does, and then we'll pick up the rest there with NAM. In the Central Plains, looks like things will be dominated by the Kansas-Oklahoma MCS, so not much going on up there in Nebraska. Now we'll take a look at the upper level data. This is the heights and vorticities, so this kind of gives us an idea of the dynamics that will be affecting the weather tonight and tomorrow. Looks like a little bit of a depression there at 500 millibars. Some, I guess, feedback there from the MCS as it moves eastward. But anyway, for tomorrow, there's definitely kind of a ridging pattern across the plains. And then by tomorrow night, looks like we're starting to see some of the stronger flow coming into the Arizona and Utah area. Probably not quite enough to help out the Great Plains just yet. Then for Friday, starting that out, here's all the cyclonic flow starting to move out towards the Front Range. And we can already see that most of these dynamics will probably be heading for the Central Plains. There's a very strong shortwave right there. So later in the day, go up about 9 hours. It looks like that shortwave is in the Four Corners area. So probably some very extensive convective development in the mountains there of Colorado. And those should be moving out into the high plains. Probably Denver, Cheyenne, good chance of storms there for Friday. And you can see the plains still holding on to that ridge there. There's the ridge axis. Okay, then the setup for Saturday looks like this. Stronger dynamics in the Central Plains. There's that shortwave looking very strong there. Kind of a weak trough down there in Arizona that might come into the picture for Sunday for Texas. But we've still got this really pesky ridging. And it looks like it's kind of tilting a little bit more towards the east. So probably a hot day there for Illinois, Chicago, Wisconsin, and St. Louis there for Saturday. Dynamics continue moving eastward. Probably some good forcing for convection along Interstate 70 north to Omaha and up to southwestern Minnesota there. I think there's probably going to be some MCSs developing pretty quickly with that kind of forcing. Maybe some of the better storms would be on the tail end, I would think, down there around the Kansas City area. And then by evening, things will be moving towards the Mississippi River region. And another ridge building in, just great. Okay. Well, we'll look at the European model and see what it's got going for later in the period. And then just checking things out real quick on the NAM for tomorrow. There's the setup. There's that MCS moving into Missouri. And look at that. It looks like it regenerates around the Columbia area during the afternoon. And then we see that thing continue into Illinois and in Indiana for Friday morning. That frontal system is starting to cross the Rockies. You can, the red lines on here are thickness. And there's definitely a gradient there in the Great Basin area. See that? There's at least 5 or 6 thickness lines. So it looks like that front is starting to cross the Rockies there. Warm front in the Dakotas. So maybe a bit of high plains action for Thursday or Friday. We shall see. And then definitely it's going to be more organized for Friday. There it is. Storms going up. And it looks like that front is emerging from about Denver all the way up to Pierre and Bismarck. Big old MCS moving into Minnesota Friday night. And now we can see that cold front coming out. There it is right there. Pressure rises across the plains. That's going to shut things down in the central and northern plains. However, you never know. This time of year with those boundaries, we could get something going up on Saturday afternoon. So we'll see. The problem is that frontal boundary is going to be pretty fast moving. So there it is. It's already moving down into the Dallas and Midland area later during the day. One problem, it looks like the moisture is not... Yeah, you see this low right here. Let me just draw this out. This is the setup for early Saturday. Looks like maybe kind of a frontal system like that. The problem is that as this low exits the region, it's going to carry the moisture field with it to some extent. So starting out, we can kind of see a pressure gradient bringing up moisture like that. And then we go up 6 hours. There's the low. And we've still got kind of a veered moisture field there. So when we put 2 and 2 together, the wind field kind of looks like this. kind of a deformation zone along that front, and as a result, the better convergence is going to be right in this area and in this area. So that's kind of what's going on there. I think there's just not really enough convergence along that part of the front in Oklahoma and Dallas. So that's probably the reason right there we're seeing better chances for storms out to the west. So I'd probably want to be in possibly Abilene or Snyder or all the way back to Midland for Saturday. Okay, let's look at the long term. We need some long-term forecast music or something. Maybe, I don't know if there's a fortune teller song or anything like that, but let's look at the European model. And this is thanks to EuroWX.com. F5 Weather has got this website, and they've got all the European products, and these are the ones that we've been authorized to show here. So EuroWX.com, and let's see how things look. Let me slow this down a bit. Okay, get this all positioned. Okay, this is how things look for Saturday. There's that strong system up there in the northern plains, and usually it's at the 4 to 5 day point that we start seeing the GFS and the European model diverging. So this is where I'm looking for changes, and it looks like the European model going a little bit more bullish with this low pressure, this low height system, this upper level low over Nevada. So that's coming in for Sunday in that area. I don't know if that's going to help the southern plains, but that certainly may move into the central plains later. In fact, yeah, there it is, pulling out already for Monday. So it looks like more MCSs for that area. And you can see the broad ridging centered on the Great Plains. There's the ridge axis there. So yeah, it's going to be slim pickings for the next several days, except, of course, along that that front that's coming through Friday across the Central Plains there. So for, yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, looks like we're going to be under the ridge. And let's see if there's any relief later. Yeah, it looks like it breaks up a little bit. Let me see when that happens. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the 588 decameter line, that's this line right here, and I'm kind of watching the shape of that and how extensive it looks. This is on Tuesday, and you can see it contracts a little bit there by Wednesday. So we're getting height falls pretty much everywhere across the plains. That means that the cap should be weakening a bit. A little bit of oscillation there. Yeah, it kind of extends outwards a little bit, and yeah, it's receding a little bit for Thursday and Friday. So that should allow some stronger flow into the Central Plains by the end of next week. And here comes another trough. And I'm sure that one's moving up to the northern plains again. And yeah, there it goes. Ridging, holding on once again. I'm sorry, we're back at the first. It looped over. Okay, so that's the last frame I have right there. And that is just showing the ridging across the lower plains there. So definitely looks like Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado is going to be the place to be over the next maybe 2 weeks here. Okay, one last check of that storm there. And I'm still puzzled by that velocity field. Let me get this oriented. It's definitely got a circular look there. Probably some very good hail with that, and some winds. Yeah, and we're still showing this. I'm sorry, it keeps confusing me. Yeah, inbounds there, outbounds there. So it's kind of a very anomalous appearance there. This is looking a little bit like a couplet right in that area. Let me see where that is. Yeah, there's kind of a notch associated with that. Let me just draw the cross-section through that area. Yep, Week-Echo region. There it is right there, rain-free base and all that. And let me bring this up to some higher tilts and see what that looks like aloft. There you can kind of see the overhang kind of sitting right over this area right here. And that's probably about all I got to show on that one there. Spectrum width probably not showing much, and let me just look at the echo tops. Looking at about 47,000 on that storm there. All right, well, that's probably about all I got for today. I appreciate you all watching. Let me just take one last look at chat there. You can enjoy the music while I read the chat. Yeah, a little discussion there about Arena. Training link from Carl Berghoff. And very good. Okay, well, thanks you all. I appreciate you all watching, and we'll try to be on tomorrow. And we'll see you. Take care.